Arthur Schopenhauer, the 19th century German philosopher famed for his uncompromising vision of human nature, delivered some of his most contentious assessments in essays such as On Women, 1851. He viewed women through the prism of his central concept, the will, a blind, insistent force driving every aspect of life. Far from being mere relics of misanthropic ranting, Schopenhauer's observations unmask fundamental dynamics of desire, power, and perception that continue to reverberate through modern gender relations. This video delves deeply into Schopenhauer's key claims, uncovers their philosophical roots, and demonstrates how men still often overlook these unsettling truths. Confronting his critique invites greater self-awareness, healthier partnerships, and the courage to transcend comfortable illusions. 1. Schopenhauer's metaphysical foundation, will and representation. At the heart of Schopenhauer's philosophy stands the world as will and representation. He argued that the phenomenal world, everything we perceive, is merely representation, a mental construct filtered through our senses and cognition. Beneath this facade lies the will, an inner, aimless striving that manifests as hunger, thirst, sexual longing, ambition, and every impulse driving living beings. Women, within this schema, embody the reproductive and nurturing facets of the will. Their mental life, Schopenhauer asserted, is subordinated to these biological imperatives. Reason in women, he claimed, serves to further the will's ends, securing progeny, maintaining comfort, and preserving self. Though harsh and reductive by today's standards, this framework illuminates how far evolutionary drives can shape behavior patterns. Recognizing these underlying forces helps disentangle genuine personal choice from ingrained instinct, enabling both men and women to craft identities less beholden to primal urgings. 2. Biological imperatives and social roles, generation, nurture, and beyond. Schopenhauer's indictment of women as primarily vessels of generation and preservation reflects prevailing 19th century biases, yet it gestures toward broader truths about role formation. He observed that, historically, childbearing and caregiving fell to women, influencing the development of social structures prioritizing familial stability. Modern anthropology and neuroscience confirm that biological differences, hormonal profiles, brain connectivity patterns, can predispose genders towards certain strengths: spatial reasoning, risk-taking or emotional attunement, cooperative behavior, and empathy. However, cultural evolution has blurred these lines. Women excel in boardrooms, men thrive as nurturing caregivers, and individual variation dwarfs average differences. The lesson drawn from Schopenhauer's emphasis is not to limit roles, but to question how much of our self-concept arises from inherited societal scripts rather than authentic preference. Embracing a complementary model, valuing both analytical acuity and emotional intelligence, yields richer organizations, families, and communities. 3. Strategic savvy, cunning, influence, and the pursuit of security. Schopenhauer claimed that women develop subtler tactics of influence, cunning, persuasion, social maneuvering, to compensate for structural disadvantages in patriarchal contexts. He interpreted courtship rituals as a battleground, where men's overt pursuit meets women's covert selection processes. Contemporary social psychology corroborates that individuals lacking direct power often cultivate soft power strategies, building alliances, leveraging social networks, and mastering nonverbal cues. Skills frequently labeled womanly cunning, negotiation, charisma, emotional signaling, are in fact universal tools of influence. Men who underestimate these abilities risk misreading intentions, overlooking genuine leadership potential in women, or defaulting to transactional models of interaction. A wiser approach acknowledges diverse competencies, combining direct communication with strategic listening, overt proposals with nuanced rapport building, and valuing persuasion as much as coercion. 4. The allure and the illusion, appearance versus essence. Beauty is the promise of happiness, Schopenhauer wrote, warning against conflating aesthetic charm with deeper virtues. He argued that the potency of physical attraction often blinds people to character flaws, mismatched values, or incompatible life goals. Across time, countless anecdotes attest to relationships founded on superficial allure that later collapsed under the weight of misaligned expectations. Modern neuroscience shows that initial attraction is driven by neurochemicals, dopamine, oxytocin, creating powerful but temporary bonds. Without reflection on shared priorities, character integrity, and mutual respect, these bonds dissipate. Men who heed Schopenhauer's warning cultivate discernment, delaying commitments until core values align, seeking feedback from trusted friends, and observing partners in varied contexts, stressful, mundane, celebratory, to gauge authenticity beyond the facade. 5. Herd morality, gender norms, and the cost of conformity. Schopenhauer's critique of herd morality addressed the human tendency to absorb prevailing norms without critical examination. He saw moral codes as collective illusions, enforcing conformity at the expense of individual authenticity. In his view, gender roles, traits assigned to men or women, often reflect arbitrary tradition rather than reasoned choice. Today's social movements challenge restrictive norms, yet many individuals still feel pressured to perform gendered behaviors. Men avoiding vulnerability, women suppressing ambition. This perpetuation harms both sexes. Men suffer emotional isolation, women face imposter syndrome. Recognizing the herd's pull empowers individuals to reject prescriptive molds. Men can encourage authenticity by modeling vulnerability, endorsing diverse life paths, and affirming partners' ambitions. This liberation fosters partnerships where both individuals define roles collaboratively, based on strengths, preferences, and shared goals, rather than inherited scripts. 6. Power dynamics in romance, assertiveness, resistance, and mutual terms. Schopenhauer described sexual attraction as a dynamic of conquest and defense. Men, propelled by the will's drive to spread their seed, adopt direct approaches. Women, wary of coercion, develop psychological countermeasures, avoidance, selective engagement, emotional leverage. Far from cynical games, these strategies arise from evolutionary imperatives and social contexts that historically left women vulnerable. Modern relationship counseling echoes these patterns. Partners negotiate consent, boundaries, and desires through both verbal and non-verbal channels. Men, unaware of this give-and-take risk, misinterpreting reluctance as rejection or resistance as hostility. Engaging Schopenhauer's insight means adopting transparent negotiation, sharing intentions honestly, seeking enthusiastic consent, and inviting reciprocal feedback. This style transforms interaction from adversarial to cooperative. Both parties articulate needs, adjust tactics, and build trust through predictable, respectful exchanges. 7. Autonomy. Within union, the freedom-bondage paradox. Schopenhauer observed that women often seek freedom through the secured environment of marriage or partnership. He called this a paradox, yearning for autonomy yet constrained by domestic roles. The pattern persists. Many seek validation, self-worth, and agency within relationships rather than through external endeavors. Psychological research frames this as a blend of attachment needs and identity formation. Secure partnerships provide a base for exploration. Overly rigid roles stifle growth. Men who ignore this paradox misread assertiveness or boundary setting as hostility. Embracing it entails co-creating relationships that support individual projects, carving out time for personal passions, sharing responsibilities equitably, and encouraging skill development beyond the domestic sphere. When both partners flourish, the relationship becomes a launchpad for joint and individual fulfillment, dissolving the bondage-freedom tension. 8. The weight of suffering, cycles of pain, and the call for compassion. Schopenhauer placed suffering at the core of existence, fueled by the will's ceaseless desires. He noted that women endure particular forms of pain: menstrual cycles, childbirth, social constraints, and thus develop heightened sensitivity to anguish. Recognizing this dimension requires emotional literacy, empathy, and practical support. Men who remain oblivious to women's suffering perpetuate neglect. Empathetic approaches, listening without judgment, offering tangible assistance during crises, advocating for equitable healthcare and workplace policies, alleviate pain. Building compassion muscles not only eases partners' burdens, but also enriches men's emotional lives, cultivating resilience, deep belonging, and a grounded sense of shared humanity. This shift toward mutual caretaking counters Schopenhauer's bleak determinism with proactive solidarity. 9. Why men continue to overlook Schopenhauer's insights. Despite social progress, many men disregard Schopenhauer's provocative yet revealing analysis. 3 interrelated factors sustain this blind spot. Preference for simple narratives. Culture prizes romance as uncomplicated. Two souls destined to meet, love conquers all. Such myths bypass the strategic psychological dimensions Schopenhauer emphasized. Engaging his critique demands effortful reflection beyond cliché. Defensive ego. Mechanisms. Accepting women's strategic agency entails relinquishing fantasies of unidirectional power. Confronting this truth triggers discomfort. Some retreat into denial, dismissing women's influence as exception rather than rule. Distraction by contemporary discourse. Social media amplifies polarized talking points, men versus women, obscuring nuanced observations about universal patterns of will and representation. Men caught in echo chambers lose access to deeper philosophical insights. Overcoming these barriers calls for intellectual humility. Men can seek diverse sources: classical philosophy, social psychology, evolutionary biology, and cross-cultural studies. Engaging mentors and peer groups committed to honest dialogue fosters accountability and growth. 10. Integrating Schopenhauer's wisdom, practical steps for modern relationships. Translating these philosophical lessons into everyday practice builds more authentic, resilient partnerships. Introspective journaling document urges, fears, and desires over weeks. Identify patterns where will-driven impulses override reason or empathy. Reflect on decisions shaped by instinct versus conscious choice. Empathic dialogue practices. Dedicate regular check-in sessions. Use prompts such as, describe a recent moment you felt unheard, then listen without interruption. Validate emotions before exploring solutions. Boundary and consent workshops. Study communication models, nonviolent communication, consent culture frameworks to refine negotiation skills. Role-play scenarios to practice clarity and mutual affirmation. Collaborative visioning. Co-draft life plans, outlining shared goals and individual aspirations. Allocate resources, time, finances, emotional energy in alignment with this joint blueprint. Cultivation of complementary strengths. Map each other's skill sets: analytical, organizational, creative, empathetic, and assign roles in projects, home improvement, financial planning, social events that leverage these strengths. Compassionate advocacy. Actively support partners facing systemic obstacles, speak up in meetings, offer flexibility during health challenges, and lobby for policies that reduce gender-based disparities. Implementing these steps fosters relationships rooted in mutual respect, strategic partnership, and shared flourishing. Arthur Schopenhauer's stark portrayal of women may initially jar the modern sensibility, yet his philosophy of will and representation unveils enduring truths about desire, power, and suffering. He reminds us that appearances can deceive, that social norms often perpetuate unexamined roles, and that both sexes bear responsibility for one another's well-being. Men who ignore these insights fall prey to myths of effortless conquest, surface-level attraction, and unilateral strength. Those who embrace them embark on a demanding but liberating path, cultivating self-knowledge, refining honest negotiation, honoring complementary capacities, and practicing profound empathy. In doing so, they transform not only personal relationships, but also the broader fabric of human connection, moving from conquest to collaboration, from mere survival of the will to a shared pursuit of enlightened harmony.